All right, we're live. Welcome to the after party. Those who are watching already.
Yeah, we're almost in double digits for after party episodes.
You know what?
Yeah.
We got this weird thing going on with our camera here.
Okay.
Just a second here. Hey, Rebecca, how are you? Nice to see you. We got these weird lines on there. That is because, just
Rebecca.
a second.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
We're just working on our technical details here, which is kind of typical when we're getting ready to go live and then we jump on. We've got a few cameras, many cords, and serious static, always causing some problems.
There's a lot of static in the building. There we go.
Is it good?
Yeah, we had these weird, we had the framing guides on. So if we wanted to shoot in 2.35 aspect ratio.
They could see it on YouTube, though?
Yeah, they could see it on there. Hello. Rebecca just saw the Twitter fiasco. We're going to talk about that. Don't worry.
Oh, nice.
I just want to say, Steve Kerr retweeted me. We'll get to it. But
we're going to get to it. We're going to let some people join us because I don't want anyone to miss that part of the conversation. It could really be a highlight for the after of all after parties. It could be the highlight of the after party.
It was a good day. Fun day.
Yeah, sure.
So how was your day? We're gonna start with that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I did open Twitter today, but I didn't tweet anything. Just
you don't tweet a lot.
No, I don't tweet a lot.
Yeah, you save it for good content.
No, I sometimes think about it, but you know what? I read Lindy West's book recently.
Which book?
Lindy West. She wrote Shrill. And she also wrote a book called The Witches Are Coming.
Ooh.
I love her. She writes just like these really great essays. Her latest book, The Witches Are Coming, is actually incredibly compassionate and critical of the world that we live in right now. Okay. It's lovely. I loved it. But she talks about her relationship with Twitter and then going off Twitter and sort of being like, I don't need to put this stuff out for free. I write books and you need to pay for it. Anyways,
we do live in this weird world where it's like, especially as an author, you're really expected to do your own self-promotion.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of balance that because that's how you sell your books is by putting some of your stuff out there for free.
Yeah.
But
she makes this lovely kind of personal argument for it. That has nothing to do with whether I tweet or not.
Shrill.
Oh yeah, love Shrill.
Shrill.
It was a show with Aidy Bryant from SNL. It was I think it's on its second season based on the book Shrill. Anyways, Lindy West.
Cool.
If you like sort of current feminism, cultural critique, she's great. Also, she's funny.
Cool. So you read that today?
No.
Okay. That was about the Twitter. Why you didn't?
Yeah.
Twitter. Okay.
I just feel like I don't know that I want to put my words in that space. I don't know. I just
my wife is not on. She's very little on social media.
Yeah.
And she was already. She was kind of excited. She discovered my tweet when it was at 35,000 likes and sent me a text message. She's like,
what is this?
There's 35,000 people that like your tweet. But then I got home for dinner when it was at about 120,000. And she's like, she's just uncomfortable about it. She's like kind of having fun. She's like, it's kind of cool. But she's also like, I'm also kind of uncomfortable about all this.
We do need to back it up now and give people the context of what the heck you're talking about. So you wrote a tweet last night. Let's set it in a story here.
All right.
When did you write said tweet? You wrote a tweet yesterday.
Yeah, late last night.
Late last night. Okay. What were you thinking about?
I don't know. I think I saw something about. It was about. So
should we read the tweet? Should we read the tweet first?
I don't even know what I wrote. So if you saw, we did a video on the YouTube channel about Ahmaud Arbery. We should talk about that in a little bit too. But in that, I juxtaposed the experience of this black man who was running, who was murdered, for people being afraid of him. Because he was in his neighborhood, but he was a black man. He was running down the street. And I juxtaposed that with the images of these protesters in Michigan specifically, where they're protesting the restrictions and the lockdowns, and they're carrying automatic assault rifles and all kinds of crazy stuff. And the point of the YouTube video was that what sin does to us is it makes us ignore things we really should be afraid of. And it makes us fear things that we should celebrate and take joy in.
Right. I liked your line. We should celebrate somebody living their life and out for a run and being with their family and
looking after their health and enjoying their day. I mean, we should take joy in these things. Siri just jumped in here. We should take joy in these things, but sin makes us afraid of things that don't look like us, the other, and all of a sudden we're afraid of that. But we see white people carrying guns and they're protesting for their freedom, and so that's not something to be scared of. So that was earlier in the week. But I was reflecting on that, and I just made this joke on Twitter about why do the same people that don't have to wear a mask because God is going to protect them also need an AR-15 because God won't. Like it just seemed weird to me because these people
pose the question.
Yeah. So I put that on, and it was kind of funny, and I went to bed, and people were already liking it. Like it was at like 500 or 600 likes when I went to bed, and I've had a few tweets that sort of have that much attention, so I didn't think that big a deal of it. Then I woke up in the morning and it was at 10 or 12,000. I was like, wow, people were up in the night liking my tweets. And then
people were up in the night liking my tweets.
That works, right? So then I came into work and we did staff meeting. We joked about it. And then in the afternoon, my wife sent me a message. She's like, there's like 35,000 likes on your Twitter account. And then later in the day, it was up to 80. And now it's at like 150.
150, yeah.
Yeah. But the big deal, super exciting, Steve Kerr retweeted me. And Steve Kerr is the coach of the Golden State Warriors.
Nuts. It's really nuts.
He's awesome.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we're at 158,000.
I mean, and so you didn't find that on your own. Kevin Borst revealed that to you on Slack. Like, how did Kevin find that? When you open up this tweet on Twitter right now, it's just a mess.
Oh, it's a mess of nonsense.
Hard to know.
There's 40,000 retweets on it.
There's all kinds of memes and quotes. But
the funny thing is, Kevin Borst, who's not a sports fan, posts this picture in our Slack workspace of the retweet from Steve Kerr with his comment saying it's like the tweet of the quarantine or something like that. And he's like, guys, I just Googled this guy. I think he's a big deal. And I'm like, that's Steve Kerr.
Ashley says, don't question Kevin's ways.
I just love that Kevin is the one who found out.
Okay, so the question is, why is this? How is this taking on some real enthusiasm and energy in the culture right now?
Because it's not like a really great tweet. Like I've had better tweets with more thought behind them.
Right.
This was like just a random thing, but I think this is what Twitter is.
You just
right?
captured.
Yeah, it's like the little weird slice of the zeitgeist.
Right.
And Twitter's not like, sometimes I put thoughtful stuff on Twitter, but that's not really what Twitter's for.
Right.
Twitter's for like witty encapsulations.
Right.
And the juxtaposition of, hey, I don't need a mask because God's going to protect me. Also, I need my AK-47 because anybody could come and attack me at any moment.
Right. And like we all see the images as soon as we read the tweet. Yeah.
No, I mean, the funny thing was there was people, I mean, there's been like thousands of comments and my DMs are going crazy on Twitter. Like I can't keep up with the people who are sending me DMs.
All like 20 people who watch After Party better like jump in and add to the numbers.
But the funny thing is, people are like, but my Second Amendment rights. I'm like, first of all, I'm Canadian. I don't even the Second Amendment doesn't even apply to me, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Second of all, this tweet is not really about masks or guns. I don't care about that. I do, but that's not what it's about. It was about this weird misappropriation of the divine to bring God into why I don't have to wear a mask, or when people bring God into this argument about, why I should be able to it's my divine right to have a gun, these kinds of things.
Sorry, I just want you to explain those words again.
Which one?
Misappropriation of the divine.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, what I'm talking about is the ways that we bring God into conversations where it's not that God doesn't apply. The sacred applies to everything in our lives. We talked about that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's maybe my favorite moment on After Party.
But the misappropriation of God in terms of God is what gives me the right to have a gun. No, it's not. I mean, we're a society together. We dole out those rights with each other. And then also this idea that God is going to protect me from a mask so I don't have to care about whether other people are sick or these types of things. These aren't questions of God. This is a question of public health.
Right.
Are we going to wear a mask or not? How are we going to do this collectively? What's our rights around guns? And countries have different rules. I mean, I'm Canadian.
Yeah.
A lot of what we see in the States feels absurd to me.
Right.
But I'm not American. It's not my place to say. They can make their own rules. They can do what they want. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the ways that we use God as a pretense to do the things we want to do.
Right.
Like if I want to do this thing and I say God's okay with it, now it's okay for me to do this thing, whether it makes any sense or not. And that's what I think that's what I was a little frustrated with. That's what I was commenting on.
Yeah.
But it was pithy and it was funny and
of the moment.
Yeah, there you go.
So let's break down where this has gone for you in terms of followers.
Nowhere. This is the funny thing. Okay, let's check this out.
This is wild because I don't really think about like Twitter analytics in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a new phone case? What's happening
No,
over
it's
there?
my battery case.
Oh,
because my battery was dying.
I see.
Because I was checking Twitter too much.
Oh, that's it. Because your Twitter's like.
here's the tweet. Okay, so right now we're at 37,000 retweets and 159,000 likes. But if I go to
like 6 digits, 100.
Oh yeah, here we go. View tweet activity. So view all engagement. So 3.8 million people have seen this tweet.
Right.
440,000 have interacted with it.
Okay.
Either liked it or commented or whatever.
Okay.
But you scroll down this thing, replies 1,300, followers 32.
Yeah, it was really funny this morning when there were 6.
Yeah. So like 3.8 million people saw this, and 32 of them decided, I think I'm going to follow this guy. So my numbers are like 1 in 100,000. Is like this guy is worth a follow.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because
if I get my ratio up to 2 out of every 100,000,
I totally.
Hilarious.
I also checked my Twitter to see if like there was any overflow because sometimes I end up in Jer's. He might tag me in a tweet, and I did have 2 new follows that were like different, like outside of my wheelhouse, like much more American. Well, certainly American anyway. So I felt like I got 2 followers from.
There you go.
And I don't even tweet.
I will say the church account. The church account gained like 150 followers today.
Gabriel says that they might be bots.
They 29 of those followers are Russian bots. Probably.
That's really funny. Oh, that's so good.
How many Russian bots do we have following the church now out of the 150 new followers?
Changing the world one bot at a time.
One bot at a time. Look out.
Anyways,
what a day.
I mean, Jer, I mean, it was kind of nice timing because these weeks are kind of blurring into another, and I mean, I work at the same place that I eat my lunch, that I just sort of feel like my days are like, blah. So when I feel like we all shared in that moment of your Twitter fame today brought not only like energy to you, but energy to those of us.
But it is funny because we were just talking about, I think on the weekend, like this was the first for me, the lead up to this weekend. And then Sunday was the first week where I was like, I'm done with.
I wondered if you talk about this right now. Okay, you're going there.
Well, we'll talk about it now. You kind of brought it up. Yeah. But it was the first week where I was kind of like,
I mean, I gave you it out. Like I was just like, we don't this energy. It's hard right now, but it's good. It's good to hear from you, Jer.
We'll just talk about whatever. And it was the first week where I was kind of like, I'm kind of done with this. Like there was a lot of excitement, particularly for me, around problem solving
at the beginning
because there was new things to figure out. It was like, how are we going to get church online? What are we going to do? How are we going to readjust the budget? How are we going to cut costs? I mean, those are not all good things, but they're things to keep you occupied.
Yeah. And
this was the week where it was like, okay, we had this stuff done, we had a plan, and I was just like, I have no energy for this. Like I'm not, I feel very, I don't know, like down, not sad, just like. I have no energy. I have no interest in this. I want to go back to my old job. Like, like I want to see people. I want to pass it around in the same kind of ways again.
That term, my old job. Right?
Yeah. I don't want to be a YouTuber anymore.
Right. Because our work is very interactive. I mean, a lot of our time in the week is like preparing for this big moment on Sunday where we gather and welcome and interact, and then see our work, like our liturgy. Take not root but like extend outside of ourselves, and so we're doing we have these same rhythms. We're singing together, we're praying together, we have sermons together, but we put them out and we have a little bit of interaction, but it just doesn't feel. There's a strange sort of miss in terms of we used to do this work in our old job and it was met in this way, and now we're doing this work. It's adapted, but we're still like offering much of the same stuff, and then we're like, hello.
Yeah. So part of it is we don't know what's working. Like we have venues like this where people talk to us a bit, which is great. So by all means, throw a comment in there and let us know. But I mean, this is part of it. Is a lot. We're so used to like I'm used to preaching where 5 minutes in, I'm like, okay, this isn't working. I've got to change my energy. I've got to change my tone. I've got to think about these things. Now I sit in front of a camera and I talk for 20 minutes and then I like put it online. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what kind of energy people are getting out of this.
Right.
So, and like I said, the early problem solving period, I did enjoy in a weird, strange kind of way. I know that sounds strange,
but it makes sense.
But this was the week where I was like, yeah, I'm running out of energy for this. Yeah, I'll get back to it. Like, you go in ebbs and flows. Like that's life.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. And I think the first few weeks really tapped into that kind of entrepreneurial, like kind of startup vibe that we can tap into here, which is like, oh, like we need to adapt. Let's adapt. Right? Yeah, let's change. Like we don't have to kind of like, we don't have to have, sometimes we're like moving. So even like take After Party, for example, we just were like, okay, let's just like, we haven't really thought about it, but like, let's put these cameras out there and like turn on YouTube and like, maybe some people will join us and we'll have a conversation. And then we keep kind of like, I just chatted with you this week about like, what are we measuring? How are we having this conversation and sharing it and doing it live in a way that's meaningful? How are we going to know that it's something we want to spend our time doing? Like, we're kind of always, but that's good. Like we kind of got ahead of it and then we were asking some of the bigger questions later, and there's room for that here. We don't have to form like 3 committees and have like 7 months of discernment before we do a new thing.
Yeah,
like,
we don't have to have any discernment. We
just do it.
Just do stuff.
I think it's a good idea.
See what happens.
Right? No discernment. So I think this tweet came at the right time.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, how's everyone else doing this week? Anyone else feeling that?
Yeah.
I think my son is feeling that. Rachel and I were talking about that tonight. This was the first week where it was like she was having a lot of trouble getting him up and doing his schoolwork.
Right.
And then so I came home this afternoon and he was not doing it. Rachel's like, I just need a break. So she went upstairs and I told him like, you got to sit at the table till you finish this like assignment. And he just fell asleep.
He fell asleep.
Like he just put his head down and went to sleep at the table.
That is the picture of us right now. He is us. I don't want to do this.
Yeah. He's like, fine, if I can't leave, I'm just going to sleep. So I turn around and he's sleeping at the table. So I was like, all right. Well, and so then I did talk to Rachel about it, and we're like, well, what do we do with this? Like we can't just let him watch YouTube all day because that's what he wants to do right now.
Yeah.
So we can't do that. But at the same time, can we have some space to go, okay, like maybe he's not going to be as productive for a little bit.
Right.
Maybe it's like we're 8 weeks in and maybe this
he's processing
is just
it. He's
getting
just like,
to him in a different way.
Yeah.
Kids
in grief. Like, and
like,
you feel it in your body, I think.
He's not acting out. He's just like, he's just lazy right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to do anything.
Right.
He just wants to watch TV. And he's got a little bit of a mouth on him. But that's a whole other thing. But but yeah, I mean it's like how Rachel and I were talking about how do we obviously we can't let him go there, but also how do we have some grace for, okay, like here's a 6-year-old kid who's had school taken away, who's been at home all day, who also now is at home with mom who has a new little girl that we've just adopted. Yeah. So he's not even just at home with mom, he's at home with mom who's preoccupied with some
other thing.
Yeah. And he's actually been really good about not turning his frustration at M. But I mean, it's just a very interesting time to sort of like, how do we all have grace for ourselves? How do we have grace for each other in this period? So I don't mean that to be a downer. To me, it's not a downer. It's just recognizing the moment and stuff.
Absolutely.
So,
and I had mentioned as well to our team that I talked to my Auntie Faye, hi Auntie Faye, about the same thing about sort of like not knowing how to gauge our energy here or my own energy. And she just really like, identified with that and said, I think we're all like that. I think we're all kind of losing some energy. This is a moment that just sort of feels like a little zap.
Now, the question I think for us is, okay, well, what does that look like on the other side? Like, how do we start to come out of that?
Yeah.
I don't know if we've talked about it on After Party, but I love this metaphor that Andy Crouch and the team at Praxis have come up with for dealing with this moment. They've talked about the blizzard, the winter, and the ice age. It has been really helpful for me to get my groundings. So the blizzard for us was sort of that first 4 to 6 weeks up to Easter. And the metaphor is, in a blizzard, you have zero visibility. You don't know what's going on. All you have to do is get back to shelter and get safe again. And that was that first month. It's like, let's figure out how to get online. Let's do something safe. Let's get our grounding again. Then comes the winter. Now, the winter, you can go outside. You have to be prepared, but you can go out. You can explore a little bit, but you have to keep coming back inside because you can't live out there anymore. It's too cold. So that's what we're kind of in now. Is it's like, okay, it's sort of the new normal, but we still don't totally have our bearings. But we're a little safer. We can experiment a little bit. We can go out, and we've been doing that. We've been experimenting a bit more with how we do services on Sunday. We've been experimenting a bit more with just how we're interacting with the week. We've shifted format for after party, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But after that comes the new ice age.
Yeah.
And this is the one that's the most interesting, which is sort of 6 to 18 months from now. What is the new normal? Because the old normal is not coming back.
Right.
Doesn't mean we're not going to get back to our lives, but they're not going to look the same.
Mm-hmm.
And in every industry, including church, some things that used to work aren't going to work anymore. Some churches aren't going to survive. Some businesses aren't going to survive. Some things that never would have worked before are going to work now.
Interesting.
Some business formats that never would have been viable 6 months ago are going to be in a year after this thing, because we're just psychologically, we're going to be different as a culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been really helpful for me to say, okay, where am I? I'm in the blizzard. Let's just put my head down and let's work hard. Let's get back to safety. Let's do this.
Right.
Now we're in the winter. So I think some of that is the freedom to start imagining, but also with that comes the a little bit more grief and a little bit more loss and a little bit more like, okay, my energy's starting to wane a bit. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah.
And then probably in the next 3 to 6 months, we need to start thinking at least about, okay, what's the new ice age?
Yeah.
The new reality after this.
Yeah.
Because
even our energy as a community, as we come to summer, not that we lose momentum, but you go away for a number of weeks. We have a different kind of series.
Well, in the past.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, in the
exactly.
past. In the past is we get through spring, our numbers dip, people go out of town more. And then summer is people being away a lot. So we're kind of tracking with some energy that we would maybe feel at this time of year anyways. But I think once we start looking at fall, that's going to be that ice age reality of okay, we would typically ramp up. Right. What are we ramping up to? Yeah. What is that going to feel like? What does it mean to be a community?
Yeah.
In that time.
How do we be the church?
Yes.
Right?
Which has made it
church.
through.
I don't mean like this. I don't mean making videos. I mean commons, all of us.
Right.
How do we be the church in this new winter?
Right.
And then how do we start dreaming about how we be the church on the other side of this? So
right. I mean, what's some of the language that you think we can step towards as we wonder about that? I keep thinking about creativity, that this is when you have different restrictions, you now find different ways around through, all of that. I wrote a little intro for a message around that. Yeah. So thinking about creativity, is a positive hook to sort of dream about what's next. What would come to your mind when we think about that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I did what do you call it? I don't know what you'd call it now.
What?
Like a class or a seminar or
something.
Normally I was at a conference. I was supposed to speak at this conference, but it
got canceled
because of the COVID. So I did it on Zoom with a bunch of people. But I presented with a woman, Pastor Mandy Smith from Cincinnati. And she had this one metaphor that was brilliant. Well, it wasn't a metaphor. She just talked about how she was talking about family systems therapy.
Oh, yes.
And they'll often talk about when times of anxiety are high, the thing we need most is the thing that's in least supply, which is imagination.
Yes.
So how do we change things? How do we come out? What could things look like on the other side? So the more anxious we are, the less imagination, the less creativity we have.
Yeah.
And that's actually the thing that we need the most when we're anxious, because we need to think about different ways around this problem, right? Rather than sort of staring straight into it, we need to think about different options. And so I think that's one thing, is that we just keep reminding ourselves to be creative, that fundamentally the Spirit of God is that spirit of creative force within all of us, not as individuals, but also as a community. And that creative force still is there.
Yeah.
It might be harder to tap into. We might feel more drained by it, but the Spirit of God is still coursing through all of us. It's still beating in the community. And so how do we encourage that kind of creativity to come to the surface? How do we foster it? How do we give it fuel? How do we put it into practice? So that's the first thing. And then the other thing, I mean, this is going to sound a bit cliched, but I have kept going back to sort of the founding principles that we talk about at Commons, which is intellectually honest, spiritually passionate, Jesus at the center. And what does it mean for us to continue to look to Jesus, to take our cues from that story, which is a very different type of story. Like that's not a fearful, protect my own retreat kind of story. That's a kind of, move out there, find the vulnerable, care for them, be creative about all the ways that the divine is present in the world and the ways that you can see it. So how do we look to that? How do we continue to be intellectually honest? That means, in this moment, that has always meant with the Bible. In this moment, that means being very careful with our public health. Like, how do we listen to Dr. Hinshaw? Like, how do we intellectually inform ourselves what it means to restart and reopen and when? How do we keep that on our mind? We're not going to just be driven by emotion. We're not going to be driven by what we want. We're going to be smart about it, intelligent about it.
Right.
And then spiritually passionate, which I think is the tough one to balance. It's always a tough one to balance with intellectual honesty. But in this moment, what does it mean for us to be spiritually passionate? And I think one of the really beautiful things has been, for me, watching the engagement with the daily prayers that you have taken the initiative in leading for the team. The team's all writing them.
Yeah.
But whether it's prayers, whether it's centering words, whether it's benedictions, the amount of feedback that we've got from people that are saying, like, this has now become a daily practice that I jump on the Commons Instagram story. I watch Bobby's introduction and then I read this prayer and I center and I think about that. Can we come out of this season, this winter, going into the Ice Age, imagining what comes next? Can we come out of that with a real intentional spiritual passion where we've done more than just hype it up? Because we can't do that anymore. Like, we can't get you in a room and make you feel anything.
And like give you ice cream when you walk out.
We can't launch in September with a donut truck.
I know.
How do you do church without a donut truck? But how can we continue to foster and encourage in ourselves that intentionality to say, my spirituality is going to be the thing that moves me to creativity, because that's how the Spirit communes with me. That's what's going to make me more creative. That's what's going to make me more imaginative. That's the thing that I need the most when I'm anxious. So in some sense, the thing that I need most is to rest in the Spirit, to go back to that, to allow that. So, again, none of that is particularly profound language. It's stuff that we've said all the time: intellectually honest, spiritually passionate, Jesus at the center. But I think in any time of crisis, you go back to your values and you either say these don't work anymore,
or
because that's a real thing too. There are times where crisis forces you to say, this was a good value for this season. It's not the value for this season.
Absolutely. We do that in our lives. For sure. We realize, this value doesn't guide me anymore. I don't hold to it. I can say thank you and move on to something
Absolutely.
new.
But I feel so far, I feel like going back to those values and saying, okay, these can guide me, these can center me. Now I can have that as a home base and I can start to venture out and I can try different things. Even like last week where I was not feeling too into it. And then all of a sudden along comes the Spirit, gives me Steve Kerr on my Twitter feed, and I'm all back in. So, any comments here?
Lots of lovely things. Some people who we haven't seen in the chat, anyways, joining us. So it's really nice
Em's asking if we could post the conference link on Commons. We might actually. So there's I'll give you a bit of a background. There's a group called the Jesus Collective that we have been in the initial stages of forming. We talked about it at the AGMs. It's a bunch of churches. We're not forming a denomination. It's just a network of churches that are trying to gather together around this sort of Jesus-centered way of doing Christianity and doing church. And so we were supposed to have a big launch conference in May in Toronto, and obviously that got canceled. So we still did it online. It's been really interesting. I don't believe my session has been reposted yet, but I think it is going to be.
Cool.
So if it is, I will post it there. There is a Jesus Collective podcast. You can go on there.
Oh, great.
I was on the podcast speaking with somebody else.
Yeah, you should share that too.
Yeah, dialogue around LGBTQ in the church.
Share it on Twitter. Everybody's watching.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So I have done a podcast with them. I did a thing. So it's a good time. So there's some great churches in there. So
yeah. I want to go back again to the question we were just talking about in terms of like what we can kind of lean into in this moment. I was flipping through Big Magic, which is Elizabeth Gilbert's book, which you love and I really love.
I can't pretend to be an Eat, Pray, Love guy. It's not really
you
my
don't
thing.
Have to be.
But I love Liz Gilbert and I loved the book Big Magic,
yeah,
which was about her creative process.
Is lovely.
Yeah, it was about how she writes.
Yeah, exactly. It is a good time. It's a really good time. And I found the language. I thought I had it open, but I'm just pulling it up. Do you remember the part where she talks about the martyr versus the trickster?
Yes, I'm trying. I mean, I remember that language. I don't know
Yeah.
if I could speak intelligently about it unless you give me some more cues.
I'll give you some cues.
Yeah.
It looks like my Kindle just stopped working. So,
Oh.
anyways, there are all kinds of really lovely imaginative language out there, and I think finding what works for you in this moment to move us from like, I just feel done. I just feel like there is no end to the creative work of God in our lives to be like, you're not done. Like, I have something for you, which is Liz Gilbert's language of the trickster. Like the martyr's just like, oh, woe is me. This is so hard. And I just felt like, oh, I hear the martyr in me right now. Oh, I'm working and eating at the exact same place. But like, what are the things that really ground me? Yeah. This is a moment to ask myself, like, what enlivens you, Bobby? Like, yes, you have some different limits on your day, but like, let the trickster sort of like play. And I liked the language a lot. I thought it was like quite a fun time.
I found, if you've read her book, she uses, she very much talks about like creativity being the sort of force that comes to us.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's her language and it's fine. But of course, when I'm reading it, I'm thinking about.
The subtitle of the book is Creative Living Beyond Fear.
Yeah.
Hello. Come on, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
go back. It's just like, this is a good book for us right now.
But I mean, I think, so for me, when I read that book, I was always reading it through the filter of my spirituality.
Yes.
Which was, the creative force of the universe, not just like that helps you write books. I mean,
no,
creativity
like the source of
itself,
all things.
Yeah, exactly. Is the Spirit of God. That in the beginning hovers over the waters, the creative spirit of Jesus. And so it's like when I was reading her words, I was always translating it into that type of faith posture for me, which was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And so even when you talk about that trickster language, even just that and all the different ways that we can imagine and give voice to the Spirit of God in our lives. So it makes me immediately think of Frederick Buechner's book, Gospel as Tragedy, Fairy Tale, Comedy.
So although there are some sort of dated pieces to it. When I read it back, I think,
I mean, it's a book from when, the early 90s? 80s?
I remember being like, I was like really flowery about it. And then I was like, ooh, is this a little bit racist? Like,
really? Oh, okay, maybe I'll have to go back.
I can't remember if it was like racist or sexist, but there was something that I was just like, there's plenty. No, but I do think, anyways, I'd have to double check that. I shouldn't say that without being very sure. But I do want to be like, ooh, there was enough that I would being like,
absolutely recommend it.
Yeah.
Because I think Buechner is, like everyone, a product of their time. But I think he's a really brilliant writer and really does a great job in capturing
fairy tale.
This whole idea of that a single story can come to us as a tragedy, as a comedy, as a fairy tale, all this stuff. But same thing with the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God is not just those moments where I'm creative in writing a sermon. It's also, playfulness, and it's also, when I laugh. It's all of these different ways that creativity can come to us that I think Elizabeth Gilbert really captures using slightly different language in a really profound way for me.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some lovely language anyways out there.
We haven't talked about the sermon yet.
No, we haven't.
That's all right. We don't have to.
No, let's go there.
Well, I was going to say, what's on our agenda? Do we have anything else?
We're ready for that. So we did the last of My Big Loud Mouth.
Yeah.
Did I get the title right?
Yeah.
My Big Loud Mouth. Yes. Every time I say it, I think I've just said 3 words, but there are 4.
It's a short word.
Yeah. That's
does this count?
Just 2 letters. Okay. So the last one was about gossip.
Let's just check my Twitter.
Let's just pause right now. If you're just joining us a little later, Jeremy Duncan had a big day.
Let's see.
On Twitter today.
166,000 likes
man,
right
it jumped since earlier.
Yeah, so
it jumped over at 11,000.
Yeah, so there we go.
In the last 30 minutes.
Yeah. 38,000. Yeah, another 2,000 retweets.
All basketball people.
Yeah, all basketball people. All still since Steve Kerr.
Hilarious.
All right, so we finished My Big Loud Mouth, and we talked about gossip.
We talked about gossip. Yeah. So I don't think about gossip. It's not really a word. For me, when I think about gossip, I think youth group. You know what I mean? Like I kept thinking that, like, well, I'm excited for a sermon about something that I left. I sort of left the word. I probably think about how we talk about others. I just don't use that word. much in my.
I agree. I don't know that.
vernacular.
I use that word in sort of normal conversation.
No, you shout at me, Bobby, stop gossiping.
Stop gossiping.
He doesn't.
I don't think I've ever said that.
Doesn't. But so I just kept thinking about that. Like, this isn't your youth group sermon.
Right.
Like, this isn't your youth group talk, you know? So what were you doing with that word to finish my big loud mouth?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I think when we originally put the series together, we had talked about the language we had used initially was telling your story too early, which was the one about oversharing.
Yeah.
And then we had said, like in my notes, it said telling your story too early. And then week 4 was telling someone else's story.
Yes. Okay.
So that was sort of the language that we had used when we put the series together. Obviously,
and
as we
I
got
think
closer,
about
I was
that
like,
a lot. In terms of confidentiality, in terms of like, just like even as a partnered person now, like that Jonathan's story belongs to Jonathan. Like there are parts of it that we share, but that's language I think about more. But the language of gossip, keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so when we got to the sermon and I got writing, I blended those two phrases together, the telling someone else's story and gossiping. But I mean, in some sense, they're the same thing. I think part of what I wanted to play with in the gossip was the juxtaposing of gossip being sort of a primarily negative word in terms of the connotation, but then what is gossip? How can gossip be good? Like it's natural for us to tell each other stories and tell our stories.
That was lovely, actually, to begin your reflections with. Like, what did you say? Here's some stats. Isn't it fun to start a conversation with some stats? But then to just like normalize the thing. Right. Like, I'm not talking about just this, like, don't do this thing. It was like, here's something we do as humans. Yeah. Here's a need that it fulfills.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I forget the stats right now because I don't have them in front of me, but I think it was like 2/3 of like human language fits in this category of gossip. Now, again, the category of gossip that sociologists are using is the phrase in this one study that I found was evaluative speech, face-to-face evaluative speech about a non-present subject.
Right.
Person subject.
Right.
So it's not necessarily positive or negative or even like a lot of it, they called neutral. I know it says evaluative in the thing.
Okay.
But I guess you're just, I don't know. They still said the majority of the gossip was neutral.
Yeah.
16% was negative, 9% positive.
Okay.
The rest being sort of neutral conversation about someone. So maybe you're not making a value judgment about them as a person, but you're talking about like their performance or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, this is what we do as human beings. We talk about each other. And I really loved the one psychologist that was talking about, like, this is so important to us as humans.
Yeah.
Because we live in groups, we function in groups.
Yeah.
Communities.
Right.
But we don't have the time.
Yeah.
Like at a church like Commons, we don't have the time to evaluate everyone in the room. So as stories spread through the community, it's sort of a collective way that the group crowdsources the reliability.
Seems incredibly efficient.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of this was around social evolution. Like where did these patterns come from in the human species and stuff? And that's what they're saying is like, this is the most efficient way for a group to crowdsource the reliability of the persons in the group. And so it's
just like, okay, I do that.
Yeah.
We do that.
And that's how we learn to trust each other. Now, then I talked about, positive gossip,
right.
Which was, the primary way that the story of Jesus sort of traveled in the ancient world. It was just people saying, look, I've had this encounter with this person. You should find out about this person. And, the one scripture I took was from Mark. Yeah, the start of Mark, where it's like, Jesus does this thing and they're all amazed by it. But then like later that night, they all start bringing their family to come and be healed by Jesus or see Jesus or listen to Jesus. And just this kind of an idea that telling a story about someone, it doesn't have to be in a faith sense. Someone who touched your life and impacted you. An author that you were like, this book, we just talked about Elizabeth Gilbert.
Right.
Like that's a form of gossip.
Right.
Here's a woman who inspired me and added something to my life. And now we're telling each other, we're telling it.
Great. Yeah.
That's gossip in a sense. It's an evaluative speech around that. And she's not present. So those things are natural. They're normal. They're good. and we need to do them. And they're ways that we help each other, we share with each other. So it's all good. Then I talked about, and talked about that transition to they actually bring people to Jesus.
Yes.
So then like eventually conversations have to become face to face. Like you just hear about someone, that's nice, but eventually you want to engage with them, and that drives things deeper, and that's good for us in all kinds of ways. Then I got to the negative side.
Right.
So we can talk about that. Is there something else you want to talk about?
No. I mean, I kind of had missed your outline listening to it in the day. Mm-hmm. And then when I read it in the manuscript, I was like, oh, I really like it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's worth repeating. Thank you. So you use language of, just next time, make it more clear.
Yeah. There's breadcrumbs on the screen.
That's true.
Actually, do all that.
Maybe that's true. I was making a coffee and like cleaning.
You were getting ready to do Zoom lobby.
Exactly. All my prep for Zoom. Zoom Lounge.
Yeah, Zoom Lounge. Zoom Lounge.
That forever and ever. Okay, so it was how do I say this? Like gossip to expand the group, deepen the group, and resist the temptation to close the group was your kind of 3 movements, right?
The telling stories.
Yeah, this feels like
you made a comment about, because I used a phrase, something about if we could reimagine evangelism,
right,
away from trying to change someone's mind,
right,
toward doing what comes naturally to us, which is sharing our story.
Right.
This is my encounter with Jesus. This is how Jesus impacted my life.
Right.
Let me share my story with no agenda to convert you to it.
Right.
We might actually find that, first of all, evangelism is less weird.
Yes.
And second of all, I think it would actually be more effective. Like I think more people would be drawn to that Jesus.
Yes.
Rather than the one we try to construct that answers all their objections.
Yeah.
The Jesus who is just, hey, this is what I've encountered.
Right.
Like, this is why it's been meaningful.
Which is interesting. I had a moment on Instagram months ago now where I was talking about something. It was on my personal Instagram. And I was talking about something related to, we were preparing for something here in the community, and you might, maybe it was Lent. You might want to be thinking, it was. You might want to be thinking about these parts of Lent in terms of giving something up. And I spoke about it in a genuine way, but I was very aware that like not everybody on my personal Instagram goes to church or has a positive relationship with church. A lot of people probably have quite negative ones at this point. And someone from a summer camp that I used to speak at sent me a message and was like, I just really appreciate that I always know where you're coming from, but I always feel invited. And I was, it was just a genuine moment. And I thought this feels really important to notice, because anything I say, I want it to land well for him.
Right.
That like, I know his story a little bit, and whatever I have to say, I don't want him to feel like he's othered, which was language that we've used in this series a lot. So I liked that. I also was wondering, when we think about evangelism as sharing our story, can evangelism also be welcoming the story of another? Or like, can it be quieter? Not just like, I have my story to tell you, but what?
I mean, certainly whether we would call that evangelism or not, I don't know. But I don't think you can ever share your story and have it be heard unless you're willing to listen to the other person, So is that part of it? I mean, I guess we could debate semantics, but of course, like who wants to just listen to someone all the time? Yeah. Like we want to give and take.
Totally.
We want to share.
Yeah. It might be something like bearing witness. It might be something kind of different, although we use that language, witness. That's kind of older language for
so this is one of the things for me is I definitely want to share the story of Jesus as widely and broadly as I possibly can. Like I have encountered God in the story. I believe that this is the, when we talk about being with Jesus at the center of commons, what we are saying over and over again is that the clearest image of the divine we will ever have in our human experience is Jesus. The divine is everywhere. The divine is in everything. God can be found wherever you are, regardless of your background or where you come from. But the clearest human beings will ever understand Jesus is the incarnation, when God became human. So that's what we keep coming back to.
Right. And we'd say something of that experience is very much in the body as we meet.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like that's why we keep doing this.
Absolutely.
Not because there is like, yes, absolutely. You will encounter the divine, like walking down the street and looking at a sunset.
The Christ is present with us when we gather.
But also there is something incredibly profound and sort of set apart. Could I say set apart?
Sure.
From that experience of like the everyday beauty in my day to the beauty of what happens when we gather together as a body, whatever that looks like, not just in this room, but like when we're being the church,
Yeah.
which I sort of laughed at every when Jer started his sermon on Sunday. He said, "Welcome to church," and it was charged. Like he was like,
I
"You
are
the church. Don't forget it. Wherever you are in your living room making your coffee. Welcome to church." Sorry, I went on.
But no. I'm what I'm saying is so I want to be evangelistic in that sense, because I want everyone to encounter God as fully and completely as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is what has been full and has made my experience of the divine complete, then I want to share that with people.
Yeah.
What I don't want to do is share that story in a way that shuts down their exploration of God or their encounter with God.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Or that takes away from them the ways that they are encountering God right now. So absolutely, I want to be evangelistic. Yeah. That's what I do for a living. Like, I mean, I get up and I talk about Jesus every week. But what I'm not trying to do with that is pit my experience of God against your experience of God. I'm trying to say, this is what I experienced. Come with me. Let's follow. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to listen from you. And there are things that I learned from people with other Christian traditions, from people with other religious traditions, people who would call themselves atheist and agnostic that are still very spiritual. There's all of this beauty in there. But that doesn't take away from my desire to evangelize in the sense of share the deepest parts of my story that I think are the most true parts of my story with you. But I have a different framework on that than maybe what was handed to me when I was earlier in my faith. In the evangelical tradition, which was evangelism was apologetics, which was making an argument, which was confronting people's objections and overcoming them. I have no interest in overcoming anybody's objections now. I'm not, like, honestly, apologetics to me, like I'm not actually sure they're particularly helpful at all.
I'd agree.
No, I can talk about culture, I can talk about history, I can talk about Bible translation, like I've done all that study, but I don't talk about those things to try to overcome your objections.
There's a violence to that.
There is. I talk about those things to try to deepen your encounter with Jesus that you've already had. Or to give you an awareness or an openness to explore that. But
not to shut you down. But to welcome you
like
in.
Commons, when we're doing that intellectually honest stuff and we're looking through all the history, it's not because there's somebody in the room who's like, you gotta prove to me the Bible's trustworthy. I don't care about that. What I'm taking is the person who's already beginning to have a bit of an encounter with faith, an inkling of something that I believe inside of me. And I want to say, let me help you deepen that. And ways that I can help you deepen that is to make it more true, is to make it more honest, have more depth and breadth to it. So it's all of that. I'm not trying to overcome your objections. I'm trying to deepen the thing inside of you that's already there. Now, my faith posture is that thing is inside all of us all the time already. And I don't care whether some people don't like this, but I don't care whether you give it name or you acknowledge it or whatever. Like I truly believe that all of us have that divine
made in the image of God.
And whether we refuse to acknowledge it or not does nothing to diminish it. It does nothing to disqualify it. It is still there, and I'm still going to speak to it over and over again until you become aware of it. I mean, that's my goal. But anyway, whatever. What are we talking about? We went way down this road onto evangelism.
Let's see if I can get to. When I was going through some of the details of your message again, I was thinking about feminist theology.
Hey, let's go there. Let's talk about it.
I love it so much. But there was language around. It was
Will Gaffney also retweeted me, who I love, who's one of my favorite womanist theologians. Right. She's a Black woman. She's a biblical scholar. She's not a theologian. Don't if I mess that up. It's a different discipline, and she's not. She's a PhD in biblical studies. So. But anyway, she was one of my favorite womanist biblical studies. And she retweeted me.
She's great on Twitter.
Almost as exciting as Steve Kerr.
Oh, more. No. Celebs in the world, celebs in our world.
Yeah, exactly. Will Gaffney is definitely a celebrity in my world. Not quite the same as Steve Kerr, but.
So I think it was in the negative gossip section, the attempt to draw a line to shortcut the process of getting to know someone. So this seems really present to me in just like the history of me working in the church. When there were rules about like what I could do or what I couldn't do, was about like this idea of what women were. But I would be like, you're talking to a person, right? Like, that. So that language of like, that we close possibilities down and limit our ability to discover what God has for us when we like other voices and assume that we know what someone is just because they're a woman or LGBTQ community,
all kinds of ways,
all kinds of ways, right? Yeah. So that wasn't really spelled out in the message. But
it's definitely there.
It's definitely there. Yeah. It was interesting to kind of trace that a little bit more when I spent some more time with it. That like that gossip can look like that like negative language that groups a bunch of people together and doesn't sort of question what was handed to you. Like, people sitting in seminary being like, right, this is what the Bible says, and this is what my tradition tells me, and like, this is what I know, and like not realizing who they're actually sitting beside,
So the story that I used on that is in John 8, I think.
Was this nobody wants to be friends with a demon?
Yeah. So,
I love that line. I laughed out loud every time. Nobody wants to be friends with a demon. Like, I felt like the room would have laughed for it. But again, no laugh track.
Chuckle in my office. I know. Laugh track. That's what we got to start adding to sermons.
That'll liven it up.
Give us a comment and give us a like on the after party if you want laugh tracks on the sermons from now on. But I love this story. It's such a tiny little slice in the gospel, and it's like so overlooked. Like I probably read this 1,000 times before I noticed it. It was in the fall I noticed it.
Okay.
Because I made a YouTube video about it. Because that's what I do now. I make YouTube videos. But
good thing you're so practiced.
Yeah. So the religious leaders are trying to catch Jesus, and they're like, "Isn't it true that you're a Samaritan and demon possessed?" Right. And Jesus is like, "I'm not demon possessed."
Yeah, that's it.
And I love that framework of how do we address gossip in that sense. So, I don't know what the equivalent would be, but hey, this is what you can do, but you're a woman. It's like. That's not even worth the response.
Yeah. I felt like that's essentially what I've done with my life is that I've been like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Like, but literally, I mean, that's what you find Jesus doing in this story.
Exactly.
People are like, you're a Samaritan. Now, the opposite is he's not a Samaritan.
Right.
Which I think is actually, in some ways, even more instructive.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing when somebody puts you down for something stupid.
Right.
That you are.
Yeah.
And then you say, I'm not going to acknowledge this.
Right.
What Jesus could have if somebody says to me, you can't preach, you're a woman. I'm like, well, I'm not a woman. What Jesus does is he doesn't even give space to that.
Right.
Because he very easily could have said, I'm not a Samaritan.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He's like, what does that have to do with anything?
Right.
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You think my religion isn't up to snuff. Right. You're saying I'm part of a deficient religious group. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care that I am being associated with Samaritans. I don't see them as others.
Right.
I don't see them as them. I don't see them as the villain in this story.
Mm-hmm.
So knock yourself out.
Right.
Now, am I associated with a demon? No, I don't want to be friends with a demon. Like that's the part he calls out.
Oh, it's almost a joke. It's almost like two guys walk into a bar kind of joke. I don't know what it is yet, but
then the question was out of that is how do we respond to these types, whether it's gossip, whether it's these types of critiques.
Right.
There's a time to say, no, I'm not possessed by a demon. There's a time to say, no, that's not true.
No. Yeah, I know what's true.
Yeah. There's another time to say, I don't acknowledge your insult as an insult.
Right.
Like I don't accept that the fact that I'm a woman is even part of this conversation. Right. I don't accept the idea that I'm friends with this person is even a value proposition.
Right.
I don't accept that my ethnicity or where I come from, is part of the equation in terms of my worth.
And to be clear, like the challenge is very much there. Mm-hmm. It stays there, by him not acknowledging that and just doing and being, which I think is the work that I'm always interested in. Like, we're always still doing that work of expanding imagination. Like I sometimes get on this kick of like, it's really important for me to do weddings. It's really important, not just because I like weddings. Mm-hmm. It's important that people inside and outside the church see people like me do weddings and see that there's that, like, I have that position, because it's about expanding an imagination. Yeah. People have a certain imagination for what that role looks like. And I step into it and I'm doing justice work in that. So it's the action of the thing.
So this becomes, how do we then give space, give voice for that kind of diversity within communities? Yeah. How do you allow those voices to come to the surface? And how do you refuse to allow value judgments based on the things that divide us into us and them
Right.
to come between and start whittling down the group.
Yeah.
Because, again, this is my shtick in terms of my academic work, is this is what we do with groups. We form our groups and we form our groups on the basis of who is the other.
Right.
That's the whole scapegoat mechanism.
Yeah.
That's what gives you your social cohesion.
Yes.
And we were talking about this the other week because of progressive Twitter and other things that happen on Twitter this week. We could talk about that. We're at an hour here already, so we got to wrap this up soon. But the idea that, so once the group forms and once it has a cohesive identity, so the outsiders are bad and we're good, eventually that doesn't become enough. And now we've got to find someone within the group who's bad.
Yeah.
Because that's what reforms our group again.
Exactly.
So you form the group, you form a church, you form a whatever, because you're not them.
Yeah.
And that works for a while. But the longer you stay in that group, the more you have to find who's the next person who we're going to ostracize or who's the next person that we're going to push aside. And honestly, like, this is Protestant history for the last 500 years, is we're not Catholic.
Yeah.
Great. We're the Reformation. And that lasted for 50 years before we're like, actually, also, we're not you and we're not you.
Oh,
and,
you baptized that way?
Exactly.
You're dead to me, literally.
So, like, this is what happens with our groups. And we have to constantly resist that urge.
And the antidote to it is
Jesus.
Great.
But I mean that in a very profound sense. The antidote is the presence of God that steps into these types of, so this is what the
I'll
cross
be
does
the
for us.
other. Like, I'll be the Samaritan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is what
Fine,
Jesus does for us.
Yeah.
So all through his life.
Yeah.
You want to call me a Samaritan? Fine, I'm a Samaritan.
Yeah.
You want to see who your neighbor is? Fine. It's this person that you don't expect. It's all these things. But ultimately, the greatest expression of that is they want to crucify Jesus. They want to other God, and God says, fine.
Yeah.
You can other me. You can make me your scapegoat.
Right.
If you think killing someone, if you think sacrificing someone will make you holy, I will let you sacrifice me. Now, in Girardian theory, the issue would be every time we other another person or another group, we always have some way to justify it.
Yeah.
So, the example is when we blame our problems on Muslims, we can always find someone who in the name of Islam has done some terrible thing. And then we feel justified in that. Right. So we're always able to keep doing this over and over.
And the scriptures also
full of this kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And end up being used in this kind of conversation.
But when Christ steps into the story and refuses, the language of Girard would be, he owes no debt to violence. The Christian language that we normally use is, he is sinless. He has never hurt anyone. He's never used violence for his own gain. And we still scapegoat him. We still crucify him. Then on the other side of it, we have no way to justify it. And so what you see in the Gospels is these people who turn on Jesus. Even the disciples run away from Jesus. The Jewish religious establishment and the Romans work together. So there's no blaming it on Jews. There's no blaming it on Romans. Like, you can't do that in the Gospel. You can't take this anti-Semitic, those Jewish people murdered Jesus. It doesn't work if you're honestly reading the scriptures. Yeah. Because the scriptures are pointing us to this fact that everyone, even his friends, turn on him. Right. But in that moment, when he dies,
like, this is how deep this stuff goes.
Exactly. Even when he dies,
it's
he
a
turns
human thing. It's
to the
not
people
a
who are
them.
killing him and says, "You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
This isn't really about something that I've done. This is about something in you that needs to have a villain, that needs to have a scapegoat. And so I forgive you because you don't know what you're doing." When even at that moment, Jesus forgives, it's like our eyes are open because there's no way for us to justify this anymore. We can't. And then our eyes are open. Okay, so what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Because I need to have an enemy. I need to have a villain in my story. The only way I can know I'm a hero is to know that they're a villain. Once our eyes are open to that, then we start looking for it everywhere and we start seeing ourselves doing it everywhere. And this is what comes back to these questions, like when somebody comes up to you and says, isn't it true that you're an evangelical? Or isn't it true that you're a liberal? Or, like whatever it is, right? Yeah. When I give into that and I take offense to that, I'm like, no, I'm not one of them. Right. Well, now what I recognize is I've already given into the thing that led to the killing of Jesus. Right. When I refuse it, well, that's not an insult. Yeah. You're a conservative. I'm not offended by that. You're a liberal. I'm not offended by that. I'm not offended by being grouped with those people because I do share something in common with them. Now, can I speak to you about what I don't share in common with them? Because I'm not a demon, I'm not
Right.
demon possessed. Like,
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, okay, you want to put me in with
Right.
this group? Well, okay, this is the ways I see the world differently.
Mhm.
This is how I act differently. This is
Yeah.
how I carry myself differently. But no, I'm not offended to recognize that I do share
Mhm.
something with them.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to stop your rant. We're almost done.
I just ranted for too long.
No, it's not a rant even. It's really helpful thinking, but it also translates into spiritual practice.
Yes.
Because I think a lot about prayer,
Mhm.
and I think a lot about our prayers that try to move away everything that's bad and hard. And of course, like we want that, but there is a kind of prayer and contemplation that like welcomes it and takes it
Mhm.
in and then allows like the spirit, I think, can address the things that we're working so hard to resist. We can we can breathe it in. I breathe in my anxiety, and then it's transformed into peace.
Yeah.
I breathe
Breathe
in
in,
the
breathe
fact
out.
that I can be so violent and I can be so critical towards others and myself, and I can breathe out something generous
Mhm.
in the world. And I think your ways of talking about Gerard always make me think about prayer in terms of like our posture with the things that we're trying so hard to keep away from us. Be like that Jesus like took it all in and transformed it into
Jesus became
yeah
every other that we could possibly name and didn't take offense at that and still forgave us for it. So once our eyes are open to that, how do we become aware of that all the time? And prayer is about, for me, is about going back to that and centering ourselves in that Jesus story over and over again. And I mean, I don't want to go into a whole thing about the Lord's Prayer. You could go back in our series. Where was it? The Problem with Prayer. I think we talked about that. But I mean, in the Problem of Prayer, I mean, we talked so much about the Lord's Prayer and that groundingness of, we, our Father, this kind of thing, this chosen family that we're all part of. How do we see each other in new ways? How do we not see each other as a threat? How do we constantly forgive to know that we're forgiven, that it becomes this flow through that's happening, right? It's not a threat. Like if you don't forgive, God won't forgive you. It's if you don't forgive, you will never know what it means to be forgiven because this is that inhale, exhale that's happening to us all the time. And so going back to that Jesus story, centering, grounding ourselves in that peace is then what allows us to not take offense at those types of gossip. And back to the sermon, is not to speak in those ways that unconsciously are about closing down the group. Because that's what makes us feel safe. Right? When I close down the group, when I'm like, we're not them, we're not that person, we're this, that makes me feel safe. It makes me feel known. It makes me feel it. When I actively resist language that closes down the group, and I always use language that opens up the possibilities. I'm not demon possessed. It's a truth. He's refuting that claim, but he's doing it in a way that opens up the story. I'm not demon possessed. We can talk. We can interact with each other. You don't need to be afraid of me. I'm not going to address your accusation of being a Samaritan because that's about us and them. So how can I take that into my life? How can I talk in ways that address problems in the world? By no means should we be ignoring injustice in the world.
Oh gosh, no.
Of course not, right? We need to name these things. We need to say I'm not possessed by a demon. We need to say things. We need to talk about Ahmaud Arbery. We need to say this is wrong. This kind of thing happens in the world and it shouldn't be. So there's times for that, but then our language that others and our language that pushes people away. And it's this really fine balance.
There's look what we can become. Let's become something better together rather than like, as long as I'm not like you.
And that's hard, right?
Which is, I was thinking about language of like unity and division, which is very prominent in the New Testament, right? This language of like, I think we're talking about those themes without some of that language.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, this is hard work, this stuff. This is not what I talked about in the sermon, but like the bigger picture of it.
Well, we're wrapping up. Let's wrap up with some gratitude. Just like kind of ending on like something we're feeling kind of grateful for.
Twitter
today. Bringing Jeremy Duncan back to life.
I'm really thankful for Steve Kerr.
Oh my, what a day for you. What a day.
Even though the Raptors are obviously, I love the Raptors more than the Golden State Warriors.
Obviously. Oh.
And the Raptors, I mean, I'm not guaranteeing they would have won a second championship. I'm
But
saying it
there
wasn't
was-
out of the question this year.
Yeah, wow.
Just
Sports, man.
All right.
Yeah.
What am I grateful for?
Yeah.
So we talked a little. I know I say this all the time, but right now it's my kids. So we were talking on Instagram before we were live on Instagram before we were
You're
live.
right. I was
but,
terrible live on Instagram, but
people were asking about Em
Right.
and how she's doing. She's doing so well. She's super healthy, but she's at this stage where she just loves looking at Rachel right now, and it's so cute. She just smiles so much. If you stare in her eyes, she just loves it, and it's so funny because. It's like she's like a couple months old, but you're seeing the personality because Eaton was not like that.
Oh.
Eaton would interact. He would want to play with you. Em just wants eye contact, like dead on, intense eye contact.
I wonder what this means for
Yeah, it's so interesting. Eh?
little.
So,
that's
so I'm really grateful for that. And we did hear we talked with her birth mom today. We had reached out to her on Mother's Day and dropped off some gifts for her and stuff.
Okay.
And we didn't hear from her, but we did today, which was I was grateful for that. She's doing well, which is good.
Good.
So, yeah. And yourself?
I'm grateful for the forecast, which
totally.
it just sort of feels like where on earth is spring. And I feel like I've been saying for weeks, like I look ahead and I think it's going to get warmer. It's going to get warmer. But I biked over here anyways in hope and solidarity with that forecast. Like I was like, I'm going to bundle up. I'm going to get on my bike and it's going to get warmer.
I like it.
So looking forward to that.
Okay.
Great.
Final tally of the night.
Yeah. Final tally.
Right now we're at 176,000 likes.
Yeah,
40.7
every 30
thousand
minutes,
retweets. Yeah, that was
it
like
is
another
jumping 10
or 11,000.
10 or 11.
10 or 11,000 likes during the.
All 23 people. Make sure you.
Yeah, there you go. Get your names on there.
Get it in there.
Anyway, thanks so much for joining us, everyone.
Yeah,
it was a fun
really
conversation.
great.
By the way, we Sunday we're starting a new series.
Yeah.
Bobby's anchoring it.
Yeah.
So Bobby's doing the next 2 weeks. It's called How to Be Angry. I've already read the first sermon.
Yeah.
It's great. It's really good stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I think, it's interesting to have this one paired with my big loud mouth.
It is interesting.
In some ways.
Yeah.
But so how do we, we talked about that othering and that pushing people away. But now we want to talk about how can we do that in a healthy way? And what can that look like? So we're going to tag team it a little bit, but you're doing the next two.
I'm doing the next two. Yeah. I was going to do all three, but these are different days.
But this
I gave you one.
Yeah. Took pity on me. But no, it's going to be a good one. I think it's going to be a neat series.
No,
people are going to appreciate it.
It is one of those series where I've been preaching little bits of it to my own life for years.
Mm-hmm.
So I had said, over a year ago, I really want to do this series on anger. And you were like, a series on anger?
Oh, come on.
I feel like you're a little bit like, really, Bobby? A series on anger? And I was like, no, I've got this. It's going to be a series on anger. And now you're preaching one of them. No, I'm really looking forward to it. And
it's really good.
Yeah, I think it's great. And we're finding our groove still and preaching to a camera.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is your first office preach.
This is. And you know what? I actually enjoyed it. Yeah. I did. I had some issues with the camera, but
good.
But I liked it. And I think
we're doing journal prep right now. We did our team worked on it today for next year. It is a strange time to be planning the next 12 months.
But again, leaning into that creative spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. Really.
It's here.
Okay. Thanks everyone. Have a great evening. Rest of your evening. We will see you tomorrow night for Living Room Worship on Instagram.
Right. Yeah.
Thursday, we'll have a video back on YouTube. Friday, we'll have another
community challenge, which, man, those things light up.
Yeah. Common area. If you're not in the common area, join it. It's facebook.com/groups/commons church. Yeah. So you get to the common area. Bobby puts a challenge in there every Friday. Those are fun.
Yeah, really neat.
And then we'll be back with a new series on Sunday.
That's right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.